What is it that people are seeing? Is it a man? An animal? A myth? Or something else? Are they delusional? Are they lying? Some are pastors. Some are law enforcement. Some are military. If they are delusional liars, why do we trust them to lead us to God? To put people in jail and to protect our way of life? Why are their words and actions good enough for that? But when it comes to experiencing something out of the ordinary, something fascinating, something possibly terrifying, they become a fool, a joke, an idiot. Not here. We are the Big Dog T2B. Welcome to the show. Hello everyone, my name is Jack, and welcome to the Big Dog T2B. Tonight's show we have our brother Greg. During Greg's self-bio, initially Greg did not mention that he is a law enforcement official. We thought that we wanted to put that up front to let you know a little bit more about Greg, as he shared the fact that he's a law enforcement official later on in the show. This is part one of about 3.5 hours of audio. This audio is not edited in the same way as our previous shows, in an attempt to get our content out more quickly and to have it be less time consuming in between shows. Also, please like, share, and subscribe. This will help our channel grow. And leave a comment. We appreciate praise, but we also appreciate and welcome constructive criticism. You can also visit us at www.bigdog, the letter T, the number 2, B.com. The link is in the description. We have over 300 pages and over 200 reports. Well, enough with that. Let's get on with the show. Hello everyone, my name is Jack, and welcome to the Big Dog T2B. As usual, we have the founder of the Big Dog T2B with us, Nathan Boland. How you doing, Nate?
Outstanding.
Awesome. And we also have Tim Coonbo Baker with us. How you doing, Tim?
The Tim Coonbo Baker.
I'm doing good. Doing real good.
Awesome. And tonight with us, we have our special guest, Greg. How you doing, Greg?
Doing very good, man. How about y'all?
Not too bad. Before we get started tonight,
Mine and a frog hair split 4 ways.
Tonight, before we get started, we'd like everyone to send out thoughts and prayers to our friend Jimmy Osmer. He's been in the hospital. He's recovering well. A great friend. Hope to have him on the show a lot more. I think he was on show number 2.
Active investigator.
And going to get back in the field real soon. So, Greg, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself to get the show started.
Okay. Well, maybe not a whole lot still. I just avid outdoorsman, have been out my whole life, live in North Alabama, and Lord's been good to me. I've got a good job, a decent living, and just enjoy the outdoors. Father of 2, been married 25 plus years, pretty well respected in my community.
Greg he's sort of humble about what he says. What he'll say, and I won't speak of the area, but he's kind of one of our go-to guys in an area where we do a lot of investigating. So he's one of the gang. He's one of the guys. So
Yep.
He don't blow his own horn, so we'll blow it for him.
Well, I appreciate
That's
that,
right.
Nate. Yes, sir. I'm very honored and proud to be one of the gang. I have been for a few years now, and man, look at pretty much everybody in the group like brothers because we got something very, very special in common. And as Jack says, been praying for for Jim for a while now. And Jim, when you listen to this, brother, you know that everybody here loves you, and man, we're praying for you.
You got that right.
Yep. Sorely miss him. All right, so Greg.
Yep.
Can you tell me what got you into this? What kicked things off for you?
Well, I kind of involuntarily got drug off into it. Really, I wasn't like a lot of people that just said, "Hey, that looks pretty interesting. Let's dive off in it." And I didn't have the major exciting that a lot of people have to get them into it. I just, like I said, avid outdoorsman, and I try to hunt as much as I can, and I'd love to hunt all the time. We'd hunted, I hunted my whole life here, and roughly about 20 years ago, and well, actually, it would have been about 2000. We started hunting a different piece of property, and it was property that was owned by one of my relatives, and land had been not used for years, and it was just kind of in the middle of nowhere and surrounded by a lot of Forest Service land. And nobody ever really paid that much attention to it because it was just a small 40-acre tract. And I hit him up one day about if he'd lease it to me. He said, "Well, I'll do better than that." I said, if you want to hunt it, just go hunt it and consider it leased. Said, "You hunt it as long as you want to." He said, "They don't nobody ever go down there, and nobody ever use it." Well, worked out really good for me because the land had been clear cut. At the time that I first started hunting it, it had been clear cut probably 10, 11 years. And it had grown back up, and it was just basically like a jungle of just volunteer growth. He didn't replant it or anything. And, like set it out designated pines or anything. It just, whatever came up, it came up. And it was just poplar, saplings, hardwoods, pines, just mixture of everything. But a lot of honeysuckle and briars and just a jungle. Well, Dad had or still has a dozer, and I took the dozer down there and took our bulldozer, and I cleared out. It's kind of figure out where some of the log roads was in it, and then I pushed my way through it, got in there, and built a couple of green fields. Like I said, it was just a 40-acre tract, so I built one green field up on top of the hill, on kind of the northwest corner of this property. And on the southeast corner, going down toward we'll call it the river, pretty large creek. It's pretty sizable. But anyway, the land bordered it on nearly two sides. The river kind of wrapped around the south end, and then it kind of come around the east end. But on the southeast corner, I built another green field. And we got it all set up and planted 2 green fields, and was really looking forward to hunting, and we got in there the first day of bow season, and Dad got in the upper field and I got in the lower field, and just a normal day of hunting, nothing spectacular, and I didn't see any deer that day. But just as it started getting really dusky dark, I'd say probably 10 minutes of shooting light with a bow left. Just out the end of my field, and the field I was in, the ladder stand that I was in was on the north end. Well, on the south end toward the river, you went out of the field. The field was about 80 yards long and about 30 yards wide. It was a smaller field. But just into the wood line, you went about 20 yards, and it dropped off a steep hill. I would say probably a 45-degree angle, and it was about 75, 80 yards to the river. So I was, the field was within 100 yards of the river. And I was sitting there, and, everything's, there's no sound. I'm talking about nothing. There's no frogs, no crickets. There's nothing making a noise. And out of the blue, I hear kapow, kapow, kapow. And I thought, what in the world is some idiot doing down here in these woods beating on a tree? And I'm sitting there just trying to figure out what in the world is going on, because I'm counting on this last 10 or so minutes of daylight to hopefully a deer's going to come out. And then I've got somebody down here in the woods beating on this tree, and I'm talking about it's close. I would say within 40, 50 yards of the field. And I sit there and I'm just disgusted. Well, I'm like, well, there's no deer coming out, so I'm gonna climb down. I'm going back to the truck. Well, I had to walk the 200 yards back up to the truck, and I get there, and it's done getting fairly dark by this time, and I wait, and another 15, 20 minutes. Dad comes walking out from his field, which was about 200 yards from where the truck was parked. He walks out. He said, "Did you see anything?" I said, "No, did you?" He said, "No." He said, "I knew you wasn't gonna see nothing." He said, "What was you beating on down there?" And I said, "I wouldn't beat on nothing." I said, "There's some moron down here beating on a tree." He said, "Well, they sound like they was right on top of it." "Yes, sir. They was right at the end of my field right out there." He said, "Well, reckon who it was?" I said, "We've been in here since pretty early." He said, "I didn't hear any trucks come in." I said, "No, if they were in here way before we were." Now, this road we were on to get to this property is about a mile and a quarter, mile and a half off the paved road, and it's a Forestry Service road. And it comes down, and when it gets to the gate we went out on the property we had there, you went on down below it about a quarter of a mile, and it dead ended on the water. Well, we got in the truck. I told Dad, I said, "I'm going to drive down here, and we're just going to say who's down here." And I said, "I'm going to voice my opinion and tell them how proud I am of them." Well, we drove down there, and the whole time going to the end of this road, we drive down there, and there's nobody. Well, I know, I was puzzled by, what happened, who this was or where they came from or how they got it. We came out and left, and that kind of started me off, just a question of what in the world is going on, and then it slowly started to ramp up from there. That first season, we'd be in, and you may not hear a tree knock, but you'd hear whoop, WHOOP, and man, them things would whoop, and then you'd hear trees breaking. Sometimes we'd get followed out of the woods, and it never would follow straight behind you. It'd be off to the side, and we'd get escorted out, and that was pretty much the start of it.
You took that better than a lot of folks might have. So where did things go from there? What got more significant for you? Because just tree knocks and thinking you got some unwanted human company out there with you, what pushed you over that edge into thinking that you had something besides human behavior?
Well, it slowly got to ramping up. It got to where it was more encounters that we were having, and it just ramped up as far as it got to where we would be in the woods and be in a stand. And one things that really had me puzzled was, when I was sitting in a stand one day and I heard something sound like somebody walked up behind me, and then I got to something hit me, and I was trying to figure out what it was, and I knew something hit me in the back, but I wasn't sure. And I just kind of like looked around what came out of this thicket that was surrounding me. And I sat there a minute, and then probably, I don't know, a couple minutes passed, and then something whizzed by my head. Well, I saw it land in the field, and I kept looking at it, and I thought, that looks like a hickory nut. I know that's what came by me, is a hickory nut laying there. And I sat there a few more minutes, and then one of them hit me kind of where you're, like on my neck, where your shoulder and your neck starts, and it bounced, and it kind of went straight up in there, and it fell back down in my lap, actually hit my rifle and landed in my lap, and it was a hickory nut. Well, the thing about it, where I was at, was this cutover surrounded me, and there was only about 3 little trees, maybe 4 there, that was big enough to even try to put a stand in, and they were all oak trees or poplars. There wasn't no hickory nut, so a hickory nut couldn't fall on top of me. And I knew for a fact that something was throwing them at me. And then, it's like, well, wait a minute, what out here could be throwing hickory nuts? And then it started escalating more, and we got to where we were getting screamed at, growled at, roared at. The things would come in, they'd huff at us, but I couldn't lay eyes on one. And I couldn't see one. Well, I got trying to research and figure out what was going on, what could be out here in these woods. And then I got to figuring out, that, wait a minute, this is what people say Bigfoot does. but I couldn't see it. I could not lay eyes on it. And it got worse and worse and worse for several years. I mean, these things got belligerent. I mean, they got very belligerent to us.
So scream, roar, whoop, throwing things. How close did they get to you without you being able to see them, do you think?
Well, Jack, these things, I've had them come in and be within 20 yards of my stand and break limbs and huff, and they would growl. They'd growl at you. And I'm talking about, when I say growl, I don't mean like a dog growling. I'm talking about it would rumble and you could feel it. Your clothes would vibrate. But one of the worst encounters, well, I ain't gonna say the worst. One of the times that it really got my attention was I was in the stand, and on the upper field, I was in there and went hunting by myself that day. But for some reason, Dad couldn't go. I don't remember what it was. It's been years ago. But anyway, I was in that stand, and it was a 2-man buddy stand, a metal ladder stand, had a rail around it, shooting rail, and I had a piece of burlap to camouflage you while you're in there. But from the stand back south of that stand, toward the river, up there on that upper field, the terrain stayed pretty level. It was like I said, it was grown up, but it was level walking, and you went probably 150 yards, and then it fell off the hill toward the river. Well, as it fell off the hill toward the river, up there where it fell off, you had probably 150, another 200 yards to the river going down that slope. And it was big hardwoods on that slope. They didn't cut the timber. It was on the slope. But anyway, I was up there, and it was, I don't know, probably maybe 30 minutes before dark, and I got to hearing something coming up behind me walking, and it was bipedal walking. And it wasn't being quiet. It was breaking limbs, and it was coming, behind me. And I hear the thing walk up behind my stand within probably 25 yards. And it comes directly behind me. Well, before it ever got there, I had eased and stood up and turned, and I was facing the tree looking behind the stand. And I hunt with a Browning 30-06 semi-automatic rifle. And I had my rifle up and was leaning against that tree watching. Well, the thing turned to my left, and it started going around the field. It didn't come on up where I could see it, and the wind, the way I was facing at that time, the wind was hitting me on my right side and going to my left. Well, this thing was in front of me in the thicket, and as it walked around, now I'm in a 15-foot ladder stand, and then the pine trees were about 12 feet tall. So that put me, my eyes are, I'm 6'1", so my eyes are, say, 20 feet off the ground. Well, I can look over top of these pine trees and all these saplings. Well, as this thing goes around the field, not only can I hear it, I can see the tops of these saplings spreading apart like it's pushing its way through, like it's shoving its arms out, pushing them, and it's going around the field. Well, I'm sitting here listening to it, and I can hear it breathing. I can hear it, all the noise it's making going around. Well, the thing, it'll go a little bit, stop, go a little bit and stop, and it went around. It hadn't growled at that point, but it goes around the end of the field, and from where I'm at to the corner, it was about 35 yards. Well, that thing goes around the corner of that field, and when it goes around that other side, it goes about probably 20 yards, going that way. And I knew what was going to do. The wind was going straight from me to where it's going to. Well, about the time that I figured that thing winded me, it stopped. And it sat there, and it done what I call a huff grunt. It went, huh, 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 huh. And it done that 2 or 3 times. Well, it sits there just a minute, it gets quiet, and then all of a sudden it goes to walking. It comes back around the field like it's going the exact same path it had just went. It comes right back around, gets right back behind my stand, and turns and goes right back the way it came from. And I'm sitting up there going, well, I hope it's leaving. And I sit there and listen. and it goes what I thought out of hearing. It went so I couldn't hear it anymore, and I thought, well, it dropped back off toward the river and it's leaving. Well, by this time, in this growed up part of this old cutover, it's done got dark. Now out in the field, I can still see probably 150, at least 150 yards, because it's out in the open on this green grass, and there's a little bit of moonlight already starting. Well, I start coming down this stand, and normally I would take we had what we call a pull-up rope, just a piece of paracord on the stand that we'd tie our gun on, pull the bolt back so the gun's clear, and we'd tie it on and then pull it up to the stand, or we'd let it back down and untie it. That way you're not trying to climb with a firearm. Well, I could not make myself tie my rifle, unload my rifle, and tie it onto that stand. I couldn't do it. No, I'm not turning my rifle loose. Well, I ever so gently ease around, and I start coming down this stand, taking extra care and caution, trying not to make any racket, being real careful with my rifle. I got my rifle in my right hand, and I climb down. Well, when I get to the bottom of the stand, to the last step, it dawned on me that I hadn't cleared the little pathway. This stand set about 15, 20 feet from the green grass up kind of in amongst these bushes and trees and stuff. Well, I would always take a cement rake and rake the leaves out of the pathway where you could go from the stand to the field or vice versa really quiet. It would just be bare dirt. Well, that year I'd got busy and I hadn't done that. So it was dried leaves laying on the ground. And that first thing I thought of was, as soon as I step, these leaves are going to give it away that I'm on the ground, because they're going to crunch. And I sat there for a minute. I listened and kept listening, trying to make sure this thing was gone. Y'all, when I stepped down that last final step to the ground, well, as soon as my foot crunched those leaves, now I'm looking at, I'm facing the tree, looking the direction that this thing had, the last place I heard it. Well, when I stepped on those leaves, it sounded like a car wreck down through the timber. The whole world exploded out there about 155 or 150 yards. And I'm talking about, it sounded like a Brahma bull crashing through that timber or through that thicket coming to me. And it wasn't taking its time doing it. Guys, this thing was pounding the ground, running through that thicket to me. Guys, I had a full-blown, nearly heart attack, panic, whirled and broke running. I ran say 20 feet into the field, and when I hit that grass, I chugged on out in the field about another 20, 25 yards. And by the time I could run that distance, so we'll say 30, 35 yards total from the stand to where I was at in the field, I could tell that thing was getting close. And I planted my left foot, spun around, pulled that rifle up, ready to fire, flipped the safety off, leveled that rifle down, and when I leveled that rifle, that thing stopped. And when it stopped, it was right behind the tree where the stand was, where I just come from. The tree the stand was on, it was right there. And it was black dark looking back into that thicket. I couldn't see it. I looked through the scope. I couldn't see it. But that thing run up there and stopped, and it was angry. I'm talking about mad, plumb pissed off. It got to breaking limbs. It was stomping the ground. And it did, at one point in time, guys, the only thing I can attribute it to in my mind, what it was doing, like when you've seen on TV where an ape beats its chest, or you see King Kong beat its chest, it sounded like a bass drum going, blum, 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 blum. Blum, 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 blum. And it would huff and it would growl. It didn't scream, but that thing, it would blow like in disgust, like it was just disgusted, just huh, huh. And then it would grumble. And this carried on. I mean, I'm sitting here looking down beside this rifle. I'd glance through the scope, and then I'd look over the rifle, and then I'd look back through the scope. And y'all, I start looking in the field. I'm looking all around me, my head just swiveling back and forth. And I'm going, I've got to get to the truck. I've got to get my truck. I've got to get out of here. This thing is not happy. It don't want me here. And y'all started backing up. Well, I had to go about 60 yards, 65 yards probably total across the field. So that left me, I'm say halfway to getting to the road that goes back to where my truck was parked. Well, by that I mean it went through the road going out, which was 12 feet wide, and it was about 200 yards to the truck, but it was through that thicket, 200 yards through it. Well, I start backing up, and I'm watching, and this thing's still throwing a temper tantrum. I mean, it is growling. It's making like you could feel it, and it would stomp, and it was like you could feel the ground shake. Well, I back on up, and about the time I get to where I'm fixing to enter this closed-in thicket, going out to the truck, I start hearing limbs, hearing more limbs break, and look, and I can tell this thing's going around the field the way it went before going around the field. And I'm going, oh no, it's fixing to try to cut me off and get between me and the truck. Well, guys, at this time I was a 300-pound, 6'1" guy. I'm not no speed demon, but look, fear is a motivator. It will motivate you. And guys, I pulled that rifle in tight to my chest, and I whirled and took off running. And as I'm running this 200 yards to my truck, I can hear this thing over my right shoulder out in the thicket. And honest to God, if you had a four-wheel drive, the biggest four-wheeler you could find, and locked the throttle wide open out through that thicket, and could delete the motor noise, that's what it sounded like. It was limbs breaking, stuff crashing, the saplings popping, and this thing is gaining on me. And guys, where I parked, I had a little parking area that I cleared with a dozer, and it was big enough to probably park 4 pickups side by side. It was about probably 30 feet wide and about 20 feet across inside the gate. Well, the gate was an old metal cattle gate that made a lot of racket when we opened it. So usually I'd just park outside the gate and walk around. When I got there to that little opening right at the gate, I come across that opening and run around the gate. And when I did, I stopped and whirled and leveled my rifle down again. That thing had already got right to the other side of this opening and would have been at least within 30 feet of me. And that thing was huffing and wheezing and carrying on. And when I say hear it breathing, it's like when you get close to a horse that's just ran and a horse is breathing. That's the lung capacity that I was hearing. And this thing is sitting there, and it's just this low guttural, this, and y'all, I back up, and I pop the door open on my truck and get in, and I wouldn't unload my rifle. I was not going to unload this rifle. So I back into the seat and climb up in, and I've got the barrel pointing out the window. I roll the window down, and I put the barrel out the window with this loaded 30-06, and I pull the door shut. I've still got the barrel out the window, and I'm thinking, okay, old buddy, you want to come jerk my door open? You're not going to like what you're about to get right in the face. And but guys, that all I can tell you, I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't had a rifle with me. Because I'm telling you straight up, both times that I leveled that rifle that day, that thing stopped. It was, plowing down on me, and when I leveled that rifle, it stopped.
That is something. What you're explaining is something that I've experienced before. And there's no words to be able to describe the sound that you hear when it's coming through the woods. No narrative that you can give to it explains the gravity of what you're hearing. It's just missing at the best you can do. But I know exactly what you're talking about. And that same guttural tone, I just told Jack that your sound effects are really good, because the first thing I heard when I got my parabolic ear was a sound that could have been, it could have had the indistinguishable words like samurai chatter in it, but it was very much the same tone of the sound that you're making. I tell him that's really good.
I know exactly what he experienced. I've had that happen to me a few times, and I can remember the first time it happened to me up close like that, where that thing wasn't over 30, 35 yards away. I ran out in the field and whirled around with my rifle up, and it stopped right there in the edge of the woods, but it kept carrying on all that mess, and then it actually screamed at me a few times. But Greg, I was wanting to ask you, did you ever get a glimpse of it through the foliage and stuff? I mean, through the woods?
No, sir, not that day. I didn't. I couldn't make out anything. Now I could see the saplings flopping back and forth and jerking side to side, but I could not.
Right.
It was just like looking in the ink. It was so black up in that foliage.
Yeah, I know. You know, first time it happened to me like that out on the farm, I was getting, you know, there was the woods right there are just open enough. Ours were a little bit more mature, and we didn't have all the briars and the honeysuckle right in there. So I was getting glimpses of it. You know, never, you know, enough to say, oh, that's a leg or that's an arm or a shoulder or whatever. But I was getting glimpses of something dark, you know, back in there moving around. Of course, this was after dark, sort of like when yours happened, and but there was a good bright moon shining down in there that was shining down right into the woods. You know, it was I was facing north, and this thing was you know, the moon was shining from the south, you know, from my back. It was lighting up those woods pretty good. But man, I'm telling you what, and your description where you said you could feel it and how it vibrated your body, yeah, that was you know, happened to me, and I've heard a lot of people describe it that way too.
The most scared I guess I've probably ever been was I had well, one of my good buddies, and y'all have met Alan. He good friend of mine. He's like one of my brothers, has been for close to 35 years. But he came and hunted with us a lot. I mean, he still hunts with me every year a lot. And he was started hunting that down there with Dad and I, and we'd been hunting there a couple of years, and we'd already had a lot of encounters, and we kind of put together what was going on. You know, we knew what was going on and this and that, and I had by this time I had done. I think at that time, yeah, I'd done seen the one that crossed the road in front of me, and had a daytime sighting. So that took all question of what this is. You know, I was already 85% on board with it, but I still had that shadow of a doubt because I wasn't sure. You know, it was still, I hadn't seen it, but you know, I've seen one. Yeah, I've seen one, and you know, I'm not a skeptic, believer, nothing. I'm a knower. I know what's there. I've seen it, and we'll get to that shortly. But Al, he asked me. He said he worked in Birmingham, still does, and he had a friend of his that was wanting to come deer hunting. He asked me. He said, "Do you care if I bring a buddy of mine come hunt with us?" I said, "Well, man, I don't care a bit in the world. If he wants to come hunt, you bring him on. Be proud to have him." I said, "But you know the condition." He said, "Man, do I have to?" I said, "You know, if you bring somebody, you got to tell them what goes on up here. I'm not carrying somebody to the woods and them get scared to death and then them be mad at us because we didn't tell them what goes on." He said, "Man, I've kind of mentioned it to him, and he's laughed about it and thought it was all funny and ha ha ha, and he didn't believe in that kind of stuff." I said, "Well, look, you tell him again, go through the paces. You tell him what we have going on up here, that we get harassed from time to time by Bigfoot." He said, "Well, I'll tell him." I said, "Well, you tell him if he wants to come hunt, you tell him what's going on, and if he still wants to come hunting, you bring him." Well, he calls me back, says, "Hey," said, "Look," said, "yeah, he wants to come." Said, "Can we come next weekend?" I said, "Sure, come on." Well, this old boy, I'd never met him before, and he'd been knowing my buddies for, you know, a few years. I mean, they were pretty good buddies, hanging out a lot in Birmingham. And he brings this old boy up, super nice guy. And this guy, he owns his own business. I mean, very well-rounded outdoorsman, super good guy. Well, anyway, I meet him, and we sat there and talked a little while, and I said, "Well," said, "you know, here in a little bit, we'll go see if we can get in the woods." I said, "I'd like to get in there about 2 o'clock anyway. You know, it'd be dark by a little after 5, and I would say, it's noon. I look at him, and I looked at Al, and I said, "Did you tell him?" He just kind of dropped his head and said, "Yeah, I told him." And his buddy says, "Told me what?" I said, "About what we got over there in them woods." Well, this old boy just kind of like grins real big, and then kind of like looks at the ground, and then cuts his eyes at me. I said, "Look," I said, "what he told you is 100% fact." I said, "He's not kidding you. He's not making it up." I said, "Dude, we've got some things over here in the woods that ain't supposed to be real." I said, "But they're here, and they're there." He said, "I don't believe in that." I said, "Well, you don't have to believe in it for it to be real. I just want you to know what's there. And if you want to go hunting, you're more than welcome to go with us." "Well, yeah, I want to go, but man, I don't believe in that." I said, "Well, that's fine." I said, did Alan tell you to bring a handgun with you?" Yeah, I got a Glock 40 caliber. I said, "Okay, well, make sure you carry it." "Well, I won't need it. I got my rifle." I said, "No," I said, "that's one of the stipulations. If you're going to go with us, every adult that goes carries a high-powered rifle, and they carry a large caliber handgun and carry plenty of ammo." And I said, "Carry some, a couple of good flashlights." "Well, okay. All right, well, we load up in my truck, and I had a full-size Dodge 4-wheel drive, and that one actually was a 3-door instead of 4-door. But anyway, we get loaded up in my 4-wheel drive. From my house to where we were hunting is only about 6.5 miles. So it was a short trip over there. We get over there, and I tell Al, I said, "Look, he always loved to hunt the upper field." I said, "You go to the upper field. I'm going to carry your buddy down here, and I'll put him in this lower field. He can get in the ladder stand, and I'll drop on off the road." The road actually went out of the field on down to the river, and I made a road right up in the woods on the riverbank that circled the property. I said, "I'm going to go down there, and I could watch the riverbank because the river was down." I said, "I can cover 300 or 400 yards both directions and see if we can catch some deer crossing." So that was our game plan. Well, Al goes out there to the top field, and I carry his buddy down there, and I tell him when we get to the stand, I'm whispering to him, and I said, "Look," I said, "do not shoot me when I come out, because I'm going to come up this road." And I said, "I'll be here before it gets dark enough that we've got to have a flashlight." He said, "Well, man, I like staying that it gets plumb dark." I said, "Not here, we don't." I said, "No, when it gets dark, we're at the truck." He said, "Well, man," I said, "No, look," I said, "we're going to be at the truck when it gets black dark. We're at the truck." Okay. So I go on down, and I was 300 yards from him, but no way possible that we could shoot one another. Everything was safe. But anyway, didn't hear a thing, nothing. And didn't see nothing, didn't hear nothing out of the way. I walked back up, come up the little grade from the river, come out in the field where Al's buddy was. He comes down. I whispered, "You see anything?" "Nope, didn't see nothing." It was pretty evening, but didn't see nothing. We start the 200-yard hike up this hill, steep hill, back to the truck. Well, I knew it was going to take us longer to walk up that mountain than it was Al to get back to the truck. We get to where I can see the truck within, say, 25 yards, and I don't see any light. No cab light, no flashlight, no nothing. And I spoke up then. I told Austin just a little bit, half voice. I said, "Something's not right." He said, "What?" I said, "Something's not right." I said, "He should be at the truck." He said, "Oh, he's probably got deer in the field." I said, "No, you don't realize. No, Hey, look, he should be at the truck. He should have beat us at the truck by 5 minutes. He said, "Well, I'm sure he's probably just taking his time." I said, No. Al's done been followed out of the woods. He's done heard these things, all these sounds we've heard. He knows what's here. He would have been at the truck." And I'm standing there at the gate on the outside, and his buddy walked around on the inside of the gate by the truck. Well, I'm sitting there, and I'm watching down this road. Well, I walked back around between where his buddy was, between the hood of my truck and the gate. It's about 3 feet apart. I'm standing there, and his buddies took his little backpack off, and he laid it on the hood, and he laid his rifle up on the hood. Well, I'm standing there, and I'm looking across this cattle gate down this road toward this field, and I can see about 35, 40 yards. And the road starts bending to the left. It curves to the left. Well, it's done got pretty dark. And I said, look, get your stuff. We're fixing to go in there and we're going to go get him. He said, well, I'm sure he's all right. I said, no, something's not right. I said, I don't figure him falling out of the stand. That ain't what I'm worried about. I said, he may be treed. What do you mean? I said, they may be something having where he can't come down out of that ladder stand. And he just starts smiling. I mean, there's enough moonlight that I can barely see him and us standing a few feet apart to tell that he's smiling about it. I said, dude, I'm not kidding. Well, I hear in the road going out to where that field was, it was an old bedding ground, and there was a bunch of old big chunk rock, limestone that was what we call cathead rock. And I heard a rock like clip across another rock like something kicked it. Well, I whirl my head and look down that road, and I can just barely see a figure, and I see something's glowing red, orangey red. And I'm like, what in the world is that? Well, I get to seeing it, focusing on it, and Alan has got a little 2-cell AA mini mag light, and this was before the LED, so it wasn't super bright. But he had the light in the bezel end in his hand, and he was letting a little bitty gap of light come out between his fingers. And the glowing I was seeing was the light shining through his hand. And I told his buddy, I said, whoa, be quiet. He said, what is it? I said, he's right there. Well, he's, I'd say 90 to 100 feet from us. And he stops, and I'm looking at him and looking at him. Well, then my eyes are getting more adjusted, and I'm like, what is he doing? Well, he hunts with a Browning bolt action 7 mag. Well, I can see his rifle is like pointed straight up, and he's got it in his right hand, and he's got his light in his left hand, and he sees me, and I wave my hand at him, and then he takes where his flashlight is, and he points at his ear, and then he points like over his right shoulder, and he points back at his ear, and then over his right shoulder, like, listen over there, and I just like over exaggerate my whole upper body, like nodding yes, and he starts to walk again. Well, he walks some pretty big steps pretty quick, and he cuts about 1/4 of the distance down, and he stops. Well, as he's walking over to his right, my left, over kind of behind him, I hear limbs breaking. And I can hear something coming through the cutover. And his buddy is going, what's he doing? I said, shut up. What's going on? I said, shut up. Listen. And Al stops again. Well, it stops. Well, his buddy again chimes in. What's going on? I said, be quiet. And Al takes a few more steps, and he stops. Well, this thing breaks a few more things and stops. Well, finally, his buddy is still just asking questions. I'm like, dude, shut up. Be quiet. Listen. You'll learn something. And finally, I just stick my left hand up. I'm holding my Browning rifle with my right hand, and I just start motioning like, come on. Well, Al takes off walking, and he gets there, and he walks right up across the gate to me. He goes, that SOB, that son of a gun come in right before dark and got in there, and, man, it got so close. He said, man, it stunk so bad. Said, I was having to pull my shirt up over my nose and mouth and try to breathe through it. Said, it'd burn your eyes. It smelled so bad. I said, dude, would it follow you the whole way? He said, man, I thought it left. He said, I thought it left. And he said, I come down, and when I hit the ground, said, here it come. He said, I got out in the field and stopped, and said, it come up there and said, he said, I kept backing up. He said, I done what you done. Same thing. He said, I backed across the field and said, it come around. He said, I was afraid to run. And said, man, that thing paced me all the way out. I said, dude, get around here where I'm at. Well, Al steps around the gate and steps around the end of it and gets right there beside me. Well, his buddy's like, who is that? Man, this ain't funny. Y'all, if y'all trying to scare me, it ain't gonna work. Man, who is that? That somebody y'all know? I said, dude, shut up. We told you what's out here. Man, this ain't funny. Who's got the keys? Man, who's got the keys? Y'all, who is that? This ain't funny. And we're both going, shut up, dude. Calm down. Shut up. And I look around at Al. I said, dude, I know you still got a shell in that rifle. Well, man, yeah. I said, dude, And this thing is just across this thicket. Y'all, it's within 30, 35 feet of us. It come right up to where it come to the night that I got in the truck and left it. It gets up there and it starts throwing its little fit of growling and huffing and just it was doing that, and then it would blow. It just like just like it was just disgusting. And Al's buddy, he is losing his cool is done gone. I'm talking about, he's like, give me the keys. We gotta go. Give me the keys. Who's got the keys? Y'all, where's the keys? We got, man, get in the truck. Who is that? And we're like, shut up. And y'all, we listened to that for probably 3 or 4 minutes at least. And I told Al, I said, look, dude, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of getting bullied. I'm tired of them scaring me. He said, what are we going to do? I said, you get that Browning ready. And I look at Austin. I said, where's your rifle? He goes, I unloaded it. I said, pull that Glock pistol. He pulls his pistol. He says, what? I said, look, dude. And I look at both of them. I said, look, if that thing comes out, I'm going to dump 5 rounds of 30-06 in this thing's head. And I said, do not fire a shell till my gun runs dry. I said, when you hear number 5 go off, you start shooting with that 7 mag. I'm going to be reloading. I said, told Al's buddy, I said, look, I said, when you hear that 4th round go off out of that 7 mag, you crank up with that Glock. And I told Al, I said, as soon as your gun goes dry, you start reloading. I said, that way there's not going to be a break in a round going. We ain't going to be all 3 sitting here with an empty gun. And he's like, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. But I said, these things have swooped at me for years. I said, I'm going to just see what it does. He's like, what do you, I said, just wait, just watch. Y'all, I leaned my head back, took a deep breath, and I went, whoop, as loud and long as I could. And when I did, it was like you threw a light switch. It was just clip, and that thing just stopped. And it stood there just a second, and it was like it just disgusted, went, huh. Y'all, that thing turned around. We heard it. Felt like it just took two steps and turned, and it walked as straight away from us as it could go through that thicket, leaving. It left. I'm talking about walking dead away from us. We heard it walk out there probably 100 yards, and it stopped. Stood there probably a minute, and then it started walking again, and it went out of hearing. I don't know how far we heard it go, probably 150, 200 yards, and we couldn't hear it anymore. It left. We got back in the truck, and of course, everybody there is like quiet as a sheep, and that old boy, y'all, he's like, y'all, I thought y'all was kidding. Y'all some crazy SOBs. Y'all know stuff like that in these woods, and y'all come back. I said, well, I guess I'm bad stubborn. I said, they've run me off several times, and I get mad at myself, and I finally come back, and I said, I'm not going to let them run me off. And y'all, from that day forth, we still had a lot of encounters, but they weren't as belligerent anymore. They weren't as crazy and just like they was trying to make us leave. Now, especially if it was me and Alan or me and my dad, they wouldn't act up. Now, we'd hear them whoop, we'd hear them whistle, we'd hear them beat trees. Well, they'd even come in and escort us out, but they didn't act stupid anymore. They didn't act like they were mad at us. And I don't know why or how that diffused the situation, but it was like it was a major turning point in what we'd put up with.
Did old boy ever come back and go hunting with you again?
Well, he's came back numerous times and hunted, but every year we have a big dove hunt that's over there by my dad's farm, and it's out in a wide open field with usually about 25, 30 people. But I'll ask him. It's been a running joke for several years now of, hey, you gonna come back and go deer hunting with us? And he'll look at me and go, y'all crazy? No.
Well,
I love that.
It's one of those things, and I'm still in that 85% camp. I've had numerous things happen, and a lot of them you've stated here tonight, and we've had that talk I haven't seen one, and it's that, when I see one, take a step, blink, breathe, take a dump, procreate, do what I've seen most things in North America do. Yep, I'll go from a highly suspect to a knower. The thing in listening to a lot of encounters is some of the behaviors of these things tend to run almost in an autistic way, where they're good with habit, they're good with things that they know, but if you change something significantly, they don't like it. If you introduce new people or new things, and I'm not the expert on this kind of stuff, Tim's the expert on this kind of stuff. In real life, all I've got is, secondhand knowledge of listening to a lot of this stuff. But that's kind of the thing of why was this time different? Did that communication, was that ramping up to say, hey, there's more of us, and then next time there might be 4, and then next time there might be 5, and we're just going to come in and take over? Was it that communication? Or was it the more kind of autism reaction of, you changed what I am used to, and because you changed what I am used to, I'm going to not respond well to that? Tim, what do you think?
I think that very well could be part of it, because they don't like us when we upset their routine, for sure. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm convinced that they, when people are partying or something like that out there in the woods, or playing loud music like Led Zeppelin, When the Levee Breaks, that I have personal experience with, they get mad. Plus, sometimes we'll disturb their communications that they do with each other. Yeah, we'll make noise that disturbs that or interferes with that. And then sometimes when we're in an area that they're not used to having people in that area at that time of the day, we may interfere with the movement of some members of their troop. They don't like it when we mess up their routine or their plans. I think it's more when we mess up their plans than when we mess up a set routine. Although they are creatures of habit, in that they communicate with each other in the early evening, right around dusk and early dark. And they start moving around to where they're going to be feeding that evening. And sometimes, we inadvertently mess that up. And, one of the things that I definitely have learned that they do on a pretty regular basis is, if they're trying to cover for some other ones to move or do something, one of them, usually one of the alphas, will come out and get your attention, can keep your attention on them, while the others can make whatever movement or whatever that they're wanting or needing to do. And that could be part of it as well. But the sounds that Greg made are those are sort of, I don't know if you'd call them universal, but I've heard those sounds several times. You can hear them on the Sierra Sounds CD. It's pretty common, but I've heard them do those sort of huffs or whatever of disgust that, that they don't respect you very much. You can tell that, or they're aggravated at you. And in fact, I heard one of them here less than a quarter mile from my house here not very long ago. The dogs had gone out, and I could tell by the way the dogs were acting that something was going on, and I eased out there, looking around, and I heard right up the hill from me, in the edge of the next piece of property, I heard one of those huffs and in fact, that was immediately when I heard it was, that guy's tired of me and the dogs being out here messing up their feeding or their travel plans or whatever. And so I gathered the dogs up. We went back in the house, and they went on about their business. But I think maybe, there's something to what you say, that they do exhibit some traits of autism, in that they are so focused on what they're wanting to get done or need to get done, that anything that disturbs that, they don't deal with it very well.
And another part of that is looking at us kind of like unwanted house guests.
Right.
And, because we're at their place, that's their house, that's what they do. And we're unwanted house guests, and maybe Greg and Alan, they became known and they're okay, and you can come and go and I'll tolerate you because you haven't done anything stupid by their measurement. But you're not bringing another kid in my house. Could it be that kind of response? Or is it the two of you were okay because I know I can take you two, but now you're bringing a third one, and I know that there's a fourth one, which is, I think, Greg's dad, and you come in here with 4 or 5, it's going to get real bad, right? That whole
they definitely
communication
get to know you.
Yeah, that whole communication of increasing the number of people naturally in nonverbal communication being an expression of an escalation in force.
Just strictly my opinion, but I believe that they're like any other creature on earth, that they have a comfort zone, and they may become comfortable with a situation that at one time they weren't used to, or something's new. But when they become comfortable with that, they deal with it, as best they can. And then you add another factor, that infringes on that comfort zone. And what I get from what Greg said, when he whooped at it, that disrupted what it always done, and things didn't go the way that it usually does. And it's okay, I need to go back over here and think about this a minute, because they usually don't do that. And, I think it's all maybe a little bit the autistic thing, but I think they become very comfortable over a period of time with things, because those nuisance sinks that I've dealt with for so long, me and my wife could go down there for a long time, and they didn't come out and really show it, but they didn't hide from us. They didn't make any effort to conceal the fact that they were there. I mean, they didn't come hang out with us, but and I could take somebody else down there, and they retreat. In my opinion, they retreat all the way back up into the very end of the sinks, and they stay there and allow us to do what we do, because they know we're going to leave. We're not there to stay, and they know when we leave, they can go back to doing what they do. And I think it's a lot about a comfort zone.
And another thing about that whoop, that whoop was not a prey noise. That was not a noise of submission. I wouldn't have taken that personally as a noise of dominance. We whoop at each other. It's whoop, hey, I'm over here, come over here this way. So of all the noises you could have made, that whoop was the most neutral. It wasn't a dominance. It wasn't a, oh.
Correct.
It wasn't that. It wasn't a, oh my God, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
It wasn't that noise. It was a noise of confidence without aggression.
Correct. If he had hauled off and done, a siren call, that, ah! And then ended it off with a, yeah, that would have gotten a different response. What he did was, whoop, that's sort of a, hey, I'm here, but, everything's cool. And I think that was how it was taken. That he wasn't trying to be, he wasn't trying to show any dominance. He wasn't trying to show any threat. Just, hey, I'm here, I'm doing my thing, and everything's going to be all right.
This concludes part 1 of our episode with Greg. Please remember, if you decide to step off the pavement, if you decide to step off the trail and get back into places where people normally don't go, you need to be mentally, physically, and emotionally prepared for what you may encounter. Take care. God bless. We love you. And until next time, Have a great day.